That being said, welcome to our very first From Page to Practice Growing Character Through Literacy webinar. We're very excited to come to you today with a variety of different strategies and insights from school personnel as well as from our Positivity Project team. Just a brief agenda. We're going to go over introductions from everyone you will hear from today. We're going to dive deeper into Schickler's story, talk a little bit about some different P2 success stories, share resources that are available to you if you are both a P2 partner or if you are not. Dive into some of our P2 resources, kind of the overview of what P2 is in case you're someone who doesn't have that familiarity. And then at the end, we will do a Q&A session. So as Kelly Groover mentioned, if you have any questions as you are engaging in this webinar, feel free to use the Q&A and we will answer those at the end. So to begin, hello, my name is Megan Ward. I'm the implementation specialist at Positivity Project. Just a little bit about me. I started my teaching career in Tampa, Florida. I taught in the third, fourth, fifth grade band. I then had the privilege of being able to go to Cambridge, England, and mentor teachers across the pond when I was pursuing my master's in literacy. After that, I returned home to the upstate New York area where I started as a literacy specialist, then moved into an assistant principal role, and then took over as principal. And we were, in fact, a Green Shield Positivity Project school. So P2 has been near and dear to my heart for a number of years. And I live in upstate New York with my fiance, Alex. Going to pass it along to my wonderful teammate, Stephanie, to share her introduction.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Denola. I'm one of the curriculum writers for P2, and this is just a little snapshot of my life. I'm the fourth of five girls. I was born in Kansas City. Then I went to school in San Diego. From there, I got my major in elementary ed with a focus in English, and then I moved to Italy to do my student teaching. I taught in an international school with all second language kiddos. From there, I moved to Texas, and I was a TA in a special ed classroom before I got hired as a fifth grade ELA and social studies teacher. From there, I moved back home, planned a wedding, and started my master's degree at University of Kansas in educational psychology. Then my husband's first duty station with the Marine Corps was in North Carolina. So we were just north of Wilmington. Moved to middle school, taught seventh grade language arts and math for a year, which was interesting. And then from there, our family moved up to Michigan, where our first daughter was born. And that's when I started my work with P2. And then as a family, moved to South Carolina, where my second daughter was born, still with P2. And now we are currently just south of Savannah, Georgia, where my third daughter was born and still with P2.
And next, our wonderful guest speaker, Amy, who has agreed to join us from Schickler. We know that her post has very much reached out across the world and driven a lot of excitement. So, Amy, we'd love to hear your introduction.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I was thrilled to be asked to join you all. And was equally as excited to know that so many people are interested in doing something similar in their own schools. So I'm from Michigan. I've lived here my whole life. I have taught here my whole life. I did the math. I'm entering my 30th year at Lapeer Community Schools. And I'm an MSU grad. I have a beautiful family. I have three young adult children, and one of them's getting married this fall, so pretty excited about that. There's my cute little beagle. I'm a beagle mom, and there's my school. That's where I started my career, and then that's where I will be wrapping up my career right there at Schickler Elementary. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Amy. So, we're going to launch today with Schickler Elementary's story, kind of where they got started with Positivity Project or P2 for short. So, Amy, I'm going to toss it back to you to kick us off.
Absolutely. So we're gonna take a look at this timeline. This is something that we put together. We started with Positivity Project back in 2022. We had recently hired a new administrator, and she was beginning her first year as a principal in my building. And one of our other schools had done some work with P2, our one of our secondary buildings. Had already done some work, so I was a little familiar with it. She had said, I'm really interested in doing this. Let's send a few of you to get trained. So we did an all-day training, and we definitely knew that we needed something. We were pretty fresh out of COVID. We're a Title I building, but this is at a time when behavior was at an all-time high, and we had been sort of dabbling in PBIS, but what P2 finally gave us was really like this common language. So we all were working towards this um, goal, this culture that we wanted to build. And so we feel pretty fortunate that we were able to, you know, find out about it, join in, and get started that year. So that's how we started. We used to do reading assemblies at Schickler. When I arrived back there at the later end in like 2017, they were doing reading assemblies already. They had a goal of really boosting their literacy in our building, and they were, working on audience behavior and those kinds of things. So reading assemblies was something that we had done. They didn't morph into P2 reading assemblies until we really noticed that it was going to be a pretty good fit. We had basically given another opportunity to sort of teach and model the character strengths that we were already talking about in the classrooms. And if you looked at that timeline I didn't mention before, we didn't start reading assemblies until later on. Like, we had been doing P2 for several years before we actually sort of launched into this. And it wasn't something that we were really ready to start right away, but once we had sort of built this vocabulary and started to have this common language in our building, it seemed like a natural transition to blend it into our old reading assembly tradition. They, like I said, just gave additional opportunity to teach and to model those character strengths that we were learning. So the character strengths, the assemblies, I'm sorry, we modeled them after the calendar that was provided by P2. We often took a look at what we were learning about that month. We picked one of those character strengths, and I looked to find a book. Oftentimes I would use their website or just a good old Google search to find a book that was a good fit. Our reading assemblies took on a similar format. They always started with some outcomes, and those outcomes were these. We wanted everyone to get excited about reading and practice audience behavior, but also build some vocabulary with some tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary words, and also, of course, hear how an experienced reader would sound. We went on to sort of define what that character strength was, and then give examples of some of those vocabulary words. Sometimes we would assess it at the end and do a little quiz at the end. And that was then followed by the read aloud. Sometimes it was just, it was a teacher. Sometimes teachers would volunteer. Sometimes it was me and with a class, and a class would sometimes volunteer to help me tell the story with some simple props and some simple costumes. And then at the end, we would wrap up with a discussion question. So the very first one that she just had up on the screen, the first swimmy, we did something very simple with a retelling with, or I'm sorry, with the kids. The kids had just a simple prop with a popsicle or a paint stick and Ooh, a construction paper fish, right? So if you know this story, at the very end, they work on teamwork by all swimming together to look like a large fish, and then swimming was the eyeball to scare away the big fish that was about to eat them. And so that was very, very, like I said, simple props and just helped to tell the story, but also had a really cool like effect, because the kids all got to see it sort of, the big fish, created before their eyes. The second book that I have up there as an example, we did a great story. I was not familiar with this story until I started searching integrity. It's called The Grizzly Bear Who Lost His Gur. Anyway, the same format. We start with the outcomes, define the strength, teach some vocabulary words, and then act it out. Um, this story is a great one for some simple props. I had two adults be the two main characters, but essentially it teaches integrity. And I recommend that you read this story if you haven't. It's super fun. But at the end, they're having this contest to be the best bear in the woods, and somebody steals the grizzly bear's gur. And at the end, you have all these little cute little woodland creatures. We had the kids with their little headbands. They were different characters from the forest, and they had their paint sticks again, and everybody had a G and then an R and an R. So imagine all these. I think these were first graders, with their woodland headbands on. They flip their paint stick around, and then you see the bear say "grr," like one at a time. It's flipped over, and it was sort of magical. To see the story sort of unfold, before everybody's eyes. And then of course at the end we have a little discussion, or at least give a discussion starter. So when they end up back in their classrooms, they can continue that conversation back in their rooms. Let's see, the third example I have up there, optimism, again, the same format. We go over the outcomes, define it, and sometimes I'll put an extra layer in there, like this one shows some examples of some people they might know. And sometimes I'll even put people that they know in their own school, right? Some of their own teachers or leaders in their building, and show these are people who you already know have these character strengths. This particular one, we did the little engine that could. So fun. We used a lot of stuffed animals to tell this story, and cardboard boxes colored with colored paper wrapped around them, and the kids were little engines when they retold that story. Again, one of my favorites. And then the last example was one of the ones we did. We actually did this the last reading assembly of the year. You can see May 2026. This is also a beautiful story. Same format. It's called One by Catherine Atashi. We didn't have anyone acting this one out because the visuals were just so powerful. But what I loved about this story is that not only did it exemplify leadership, but at the very end, there were so many. Oh, I forgot about that part. Sometimes I'll throw in a little bit of figurative language, or this particular one, there was some idioms in there we pointed out. But I love this one at the end because they were able to easily identify who the leader was in the story. Please read this one if you haven't. It's just a gorgeous, beautiful story. But also there were so many other character strengths that were examples in this story. And what I loved, it felt like a review, like the kids were able to not only identify like the main character strength in the story, but they were able to really pull out what are some other character strengths that they could see happening throughout the story. And so it turned out like a natural way to sort of review some of the other character strengths that we have been learning about throughout the year. And, you know, it just blended itself really well due to the nature of this story. So yeah, those are just a few of the examples of what we would do. And I guess I hadn't had an opportunity until I was asked to put them all on paper. So I did my best to try and dig through all of my slide decks and try to remember the books that we had read in the past, and then link it with the character strength that we had tied and discussed with it. But it is a sort of a work in progress. So I'm I love that there's so many other minds on this because I feel like I could get so many other ideas of other books that would lend themselves well to an assembly like this. Maybe now that there's more people thinking about it. So I'm excited to get maybe some more ideas from other people about books they might use.
And
I
I
love
sent
that.
that in the chat, a link to that book list. It'll also be sent in tomorrow's follow-up email.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Amy.
All right, so what we'd like to do now, we're going to just highlight a couple different partner schools because when you think about Positivity Project and work with character education and these character strengths, there are a lot of other impacts that are felt throughout the school. I'm actually going to pass it back to Amy because she's kind enough to share the success that they have had at Schickler after utilizing P2. So Amy, I'm going to pass it
Yeah,
back to you.
just briefly, when I had seen what they were, the panel was planning to talk about, I made sure to show them. My colleagues and I had just recently done a presentation for our district leaders about the impact that we were noticing in our journey with P2. And this was one of the things that we were able to share with our district as far as the impact that P2 is making in our building, and that was with behavior office referrals. And so you can see we don't have data from pre-2023, but you can see how they have steadily declined over the course of 3 years of our time with P2.
Thank you, Amy. And I just want to pause to thank you for sharing your story and diving deep into the resources and the thought that you put into kind of taking what P2 has created and going the extra mile to figure out how can it integrate into something that your site was already doing, such as the literacy assembles. So just commendable. And we're so lucky to have you on our call today. All right, so we're going to go through just a couple other success stories before we dive into P2-based literacy resources, some of which are open to the public, even if you're not a partner school. And then we will end with the brief kind of P2 overview before the Q&A. My own personal story with P2, we were a Title I in the upstate Syracuse area, and we were a K-2 building when we first opened. We eventually ended up being K-5, but we were very much struggling. We were struggling with just kind of the building culture as a whole, positive relationships, whether it was student to staff, staff to staff, kind of all the ways that web can weave. And we researched a variety of programs. I was in an assistant principal role at the time, and our leader decided, hey, we're going to try P2. We got trained. There was a lot of staff buy-in because there was a recognition of we needed something to do to support the overall building. After 1 year with P2, we saw dramatic impacts. Before P2, we were at over 1,600 referrals, and after 1 year, we were down to about 116 referable offenses. So it was just incredible. You know, those are numbers, but the anecdotal stories that we have that we saw, you know, is something simple as students holding a door open for someone or saying sorry when they bumped into someone or, hey, can I help you do this? Those types of, you know, kind of behind the scenes elements also. A few other partner stories that I want to share. Westlake Middle, they send a quarterly student, it's kind of like an overall building wellness survey that students participate in. And after 1 quarter, of P2. This is the data that Westlake was kind enough to share with us. So if you take a look, feeling safe at school had an increase after 1 quarter, and students feeling cared for by their teachers had a dramatic increase from 54% to 83%. Adding to that, our friends in North Carolina at Odell Elementary, they focused on an area that they were kind of struggling with, and that was referrals during the playground or recess time. There was a decrease from 36 to 21. So again, other areas that P2 has impacted when you think about whole school community, all times of day. Additionally, the most important way, getting students to school at Lobelstall Elementary in Michigan, these individuals were able to track and realize that there was a decrease in not only recess referrals, but also 75% decrease in bus violations. That's a unstructured time. There's high stimulation. There's a lot going on. So being able to help students kind of have those proactive words and those proactive character strengths to draw upon when they're not in those structured environments. Palms Elementary. This is another school in Michigan, and they tracked the academic growth. So when you think about some of the things that Amy's talked about, how the character strengths kind of lend themselves to literacy on top of, helping to create that positive school culture, we look at increasing state assessment data with 10% gain in student achievement, and in some grade levels, as much as a 20% increase. Our friends in Discovery Elementary in California, like many, have been battling chronic absenteeism. And if you take a look with P2 implementation, they have noticed a steady decrease at almost 20% down to a little bit over 5 after years of P2 utilization. And lastly, again, just those organic anecdotal elements are really important when students are able to recognize the strengths in themselves, but also the strengths in others, and just kind of bringing those positive elements to life throughout the school community. Now I'm going to pass the microphone over to Steph from our P2 curriculum team to talk about some of our P2 resources.
Thanks, Megan. Okay, so we're going to start off first with P2's book list. I know Amy has mentioned it. She said that she was able to gather some of her titles from this book list. Just a little backstory here. I had just recently gotten out of the classroom, and I was having a conversation with Jeff Bryan, one of our founders, and he was talking about the character strengths, and I'd never heard of P2. I mean, I'd taken positive psychology in grad school, but I just never considered it from the perspective of littles learning about it. But as he's listing off these character strengths of like love of learning, humility, bravery, I was like, well, has anyone ever created a book list for you? Because my brain is just like going wild with all the novels I have been reading with my students, that characters show these all the time in the novels. So that's where this book list sort of originated. So we have books on there from pre-K all the way up to high school level. You will notice that perhaps if you are a book nerd, as maybe I am, you'll notice that we don't have all the titles, obviously, but some of that is by design. Our curriculum director, manager, she goes through this every year and makes sure to vet the book titles based off of states' mandates. So we can't say that we don't want you to go in this. We can say that they're vetted and we want, they're safe, but you should always check with whatever your district has. But this is a good, safe place to get started. One way I personally would use this book list in my classroom would be, I love doing literature circles, and I loved having literature circles reading different books at different times. And so one thing I would do would be, I would do like perhaps a bravery literature circle. So I would go up there to character strength, I would look up bravery, and then I would look up different titles by grade level. Because we all know students have varying levels of reading abilities. And so then you can really tailor this towards your students, towards your literature circles. So they're reading a book about bravery. Everyone's talking about bravery, but they're reading a book that's appropriate for them, and they're engaging with other classmates that are on their appropriate grade level, but they don't know that they might be reading a grade lower or they might be reading a grade higher. That could also be done in your book groups that you do with littles, pulling different read aloud books that are appropriate for your different book groups. So there's a lot of of different ways that you can go about using this book list. And I'm so happy to hear Amy's way of these reading assemblies, that this was useful to her. Moving further into our resources, we have this, what's called our content area toolbox. And one of the main purposes as curriculum writers, all the curriculum writers for P2 are previous teachers, and we know you're busy. We know you have curriculum that you need to teach, and there's so many programs that can be adopted, and the expectation is that you'll take all of your extra time to go digging through all those resources and then use them in your classroom in some way, and that's not super feasible at all times. So what we have done is we've created these content area toolboxes by these different content areas where we've pulled all the resources we believe fit within those areas, and we've created their own little toolbox. So if you're a science teacher, we have one for you. If you're a math teacher, we have one for you. If you are a primary elementary teacher and you teach all of them, we have all of them for you. So that's one way, are those activities at the top, a way to embed in what you're already teaching. And then at the bottom, we have all of our character strengths separated by the different content areas. This could be where ELA only teaches those specifically, or it could be you're teaching all of our slide decks, but it makes sense to talk about the word perspective in social studies. It makes sense to use the vocabulary of curiosity in science. That's just another tool in our toolbox for you to use. So we're going to dive more deeply into the language arts one, obviously. So at the top, you'll see we have activities, and then you'll see at the bottom, we have PBLs and scripted PBLs. So I'm going to dive into more specifically what each one of these does for you. And we're going to look at the literature circle activities next. So the whole purpose, again, of these is for you to use this with whatever you are already teaching. All it does is just puts the character strength lens on it that you can use with your students. So it's just, those character strengths are already there. They're already in the stories you're teaching. It's just changing that lens to help students realize, oh, I see bravery now, or I see leadership. It's that real life application that I think sometimes gets lost in translation, or I don't know. So anyways, the nice thing about these is it does say grades pre-K2. It is absolutely appropriate for grades pre-K2, but this could be used with any grade level. I mean, I joke, I know juniors in high school who would love to draw a picture of their favorite character. I know my middle schoolers loved when I read aloud, picture books to them. So although it says grades pre-K2, if this fits for your classroom, you should absolutely use it. And the nice thing about both the book list and the literature circle activities is they are open to everyone. So even if you do not become a P2 partner, although we hope you do, this would be there for you to start having those conversations with your students. And another example of another literature circle activity, we've said this 3-5, but again, this could be used anywhere, is this circle choice board. So another way I see this being used is you could do it in your literature circles, or you could model this with your read aloud, where you're working box by box together as a class with your read aloud, and then you are putting students out there to do it on their own. Or it becomes one of your stations where they have to pick one of these choice boards while they're moving from station to station. It's just another resource that you can use with any grade as you see fit. And lastly are another resource, literature circle tiered responses. I use these in my own classroom with my middle school students. So you might assign them a certain amount of points that they need to respond. And obviously you can see that these things become more challenging as the points get higher, hence the higher point level. But what I would do is sometimes with my kiddos that needed more challenge, I would require them that they had to do at least one 5-point response. Or with my kids that struggled a little bit, I would say, okay, you need to do 3 points and lower to get to your 10 points. So this really has a lot of customization options in it. And like Megan said she could see this being used with her 3rd grade students, so that although it looks more challenging, it's meant to be used for however you want to use this. And then we move into these project-based learning opportunities. And I'm going to jump in a little bit deeper. We have open-ended projects here. And so again, in that content area toolkit, every content area will have a customized list of what projects we believe fit well within that area that would align with your standards. So the open-ended projects are meant for teachers to take these. We have all the bones and the meat there, but you get to have autonomy and decide what is the product that my students are going to create at the end of this. How long are we going to work on this? What part of my curriculum do I want to tie this into? So we have all of these open-ended projects, a huge library of them actually, but on that content area toolkit, we've decided for you which ones we feel fit well with language arts. So that would be a great jumping off point. If you wanted to really get into PBLs and tie it directly with your curriculum, these open-ended projects are a great place for you to dig in and make it what you want it. On the other end, we have scripted PBLs. And what I didn't say before is our PBLs are scaffolded by grade levels. So scripted PBLs, we have a very specific scaffolding where we have pre-KK, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12. And the beauty of scripted PBLs is it's set up just like our slide decks are, where it's 10 to 15 minutes every single day for a week. So you start off on Monday, the students are engaging with the project, and by Friday, they have the project completed. We've made all the decisions for you. We have all the graphic organizers you need. We have all the templates you need. So this could be done just in a classroom, but what I think would be really cool is if a whole school engaged with the same scripted PBL, or a whole district engaged with the same scripted PBL, so that you have pre-K students answering a similar question and creating a similar project. Like in this one that's on the screen, a newspaper article, the pre-K one looks very different than what you have on the screen right now, which is the high school level one. But at the end of it, they're all engaging with this character in our community and what that looks like from their perspective. And then last thing, I found that reading novels was always the largest catalyst for my students to want to get involved, to want to make a difference. They'd read a story and it's like, well, what can we do? How can we help? And so one thing I want to bring your attention to is we also have these service learning opportunities. Many of you probably already have service learning projects that your schools do every single year. Here is a way to introduce that project, again, with the lens of character strengths with Positivity Project. This is meant to be off the shelf so that you just take that top part, the intro to service learning, and you just work through those with your students. And now they understand the idea of service learning through character strengths, why it's important, why we should help other people, the other people mindset. We have it all set up for you. If your school does not have a set service project, we also have project options that we have mapped out for you to get you started, different ideas. And then at the end, we have that service learning reflection, because that's one of the most beautiful things, is for students to stop and really reflect on, what have we done here? Like, how cool is that we've just had this idea and we've implemented it and we've created this awesome impact. So those are a little bit of the resources we have with the lens of literature in mind. And again, I want to emphasize that if you become a partner school, you have access to all of our resources. So if you are a fourth grade teacher and you find something that you love in the middle school section, we absolutely want you to take it and make it fit into your classroom. The whole purpose of P2 is meant to be as easy as possible for teachers. It's supposed to be as off the shelf as possible for teachers. And it is meant to enhance what you're already teaching. It's not meant to be another thing. It's just meant to be a lens to not only look at the curriculum you're teaching, but a lens to look at each other, to look at the world, that your students will leave you understanding themselves and understanding each other better. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Steph, for that in-depth look. Whoops. did not mean to do that, at all of the resources and sharing. What we'd like to do now, I'm going to take just a couple minutes and provide a P2 overview before we dive deep into our Q&A session. We have some people on the call that are present partners, but we have many that are not, and we keep saying things like P2, Positivity Project. So we want to kind of just give a brief overview. Um, our work at P2 is based on character strengths, and Dr. Chris Peterson is an individual who did a lot of research with positive psychology. All of this research led to find that there are 24 character strengths that are evident in all individuals, looking at different traditions, looking at humans throughout history. So what we have done at P2, we've taken these 24 character strengths and combined them with what we call our OPMs, or our other people mindsets. So when we think of our P2 curriculum, there are character strengths that are taught weekly or these OPMs. And these OPMs are kind of like broad themes, cheering on the success of others, supporting others when they struggle. And they're woven in with these 24 character strengths. So some of these words you've heard Amy speak about, you've heard Stephanie speak about bravery, creativity, things along those lines. Now, our model, when you think about a positive school culture, there are a couple of key elements. We're striving to have those positive relationships. Like I mentioned, my own story, that was our area of struggle. We really couldn't find that kind of common ground to bring us to that. There are a couple of elements that lead to those positive relationships. We have to be able to recognize in ourselves what are the strengths that we bring to the table, but also at the same time, what are the areas that we're trying to grow in? What are the strengths in progress? We also need to be able to recognize the same in others. When I look at those around me, what are the strengths they bring to the table? Who can I go to for support? What do they bring to the table in different situations? When you kind of think about this lens, it evolves into our P2 curriculum. What we have is our P2 resource guide sort of houses all of these different resources, many of which Steph showed today on the call. We have everything from MTSS toolkits, we have character cards, we have assembly ideas, everything along those lines. But what I really want to do is just show those daily 10 to 15-minute lessons. In some cases, they're taught in a morning meeting. Sometimes they're squeezed in after lunch. It's meant to be 5 days a week, but sometimes, I remember mandated minutes, I remember snow days, I remember field trips. Doesn't always happen. And what's nice about P2 is it really is truly meant to be take these resources and make them work for your school site. And that was something at my former building that we found to be tremendously helpful and lead to success. So what we have, if I'm a classroom teacher and I'm looking to deliver our lessons, I go to the calendar, and as you can see, all of the character strengths and then those OPMs are listed out. When I click on a given character strength, and I'm going to click on perseverance, it brings me to a toolkit. And this toolkit has all of the resources that I could want or need. But if I'm a classroom teacher and I'm looking for those lessons, it's this first section up top that I kind of hone in on. What I do want to mention is that each individual grade level has its own slide deck, and there is not repetition of content or materials, rather things build. Every now and then you might find a video repeated, but it's very similar to like a close reading approach, where it might be a video where you dive deeper or you look at the video for a different purpose, but it is not repeated. It's more so we build at each grade level. So I'm just going to pick second grade. When you get into this slide deck, you have all the resources that you need for each of the lessons. And as Steph said, this is truly a plug and play. This was one of the biggest shifts I had when we were looking at curriculums. You think of your math curriculums, it's page after page after page. If you're writing out your ELA plans, you have to read ahead, you have to be purposeful. P2, you can quite literally open the slide deck, look at the lesson, and be ready to go. Complete code shift. So in a slide deck, we offer lesson plan overview if you want to take a look at it, but truly, we dive into the slides, usually about 3 to 5 per day. I would like to take a moment and just kind of share the model. So it's a 5-day, about 10 to 15-minute lesson approach. Day 1 and day 2 are the understand component. So we are building background knowledge. We're developing a working definition of the strengths. So for example, here's day one. We're in second grade. We define perseverance. We have a short quote. We have a video read aloud that we're going to engage with. We have a few questions. That's it. Day two, similar. We again redefine exposure matters. We have a quote, we have a video, we have some questions. Day one and day two, again, understand. Days three and four move into engage. So sometimes activating higher order thinking, looking at some scenarios, activities. It just kind of depends on the week and depends on the character strength in terms of what that looks like. But a day three, here's the lesson. Times I persevered. It's an activity that we engage in together. Day four, we have a partner share that related to what we did yesterday. Day five, we move into the reflection period. So we circle back, we bring that character strength out again, that definition, and then we have time to reflect. And that is it. That's the structure of the week. So it truly is meant to be those plug and play daily lessons. In addition to this resource guide with an abundance of different resources, again, all grade bands, there are electives, mindful moments, resources in Spanish that are available, certificates, all of that great stuff. So with that, I would like to, before we move into questions, first and foremost, thank Amy for taking the time out of her summer to join us and share the incredible stories that have emerged at Schickler. So I'm just going to give the celebration to Amy. Steph, thank you for diving deeper into our P2 resources. If you are a current partner, I have my email address down at the bottom. If you'd like to connect, if you have specific questions, wonderings, and I can always triage questions over to Steph. If you are not a present partner, there are two QR codes on this screen right now. The first one does give you free lessons for our perseverance set. So you're able to access those, kind of look through them, share them with leadership, things like that. And then if you're not a present partner and you've really enjoyed the resources, you'd like to know more, there's also a QR code to meet with our Director of Instructional Services, my counterpart, Dominic Frisina. So again, we thank everyone for taking the time, whether you've returned to school or you are enjoying the rest of your summer. And Kelly, I'm going to pass the mic to you to open up to questions that can be put in the Q&A.
Yeah, we will wait for questions to flow into the Q&A, but I have a question for you, Megan, if you can go into this. I saw on one of your previous slides a book vending machine. Can you tell everyone a little bit about how schools use those?
Absolutely. So a couple of our partner schools have taken, again, existing initiatives. Many of them have had a book vending machines funded by PTO, PTA, things along those lines. And they've incorporated P2. We actually have something called these daily Katya tickets that are similar to kind of like a raffle where different character strengths are written out. And a lot of times these schools are now utilizing basically the component of looking for those strengths in others when they're finding students or students are finding their peers that are going above and beyond displaying these strengths, getting to take these tickets, cash them in, and be able to choose a book from the book vending machine. And again, a lot of schools are really coming and sharing these stories with us. They are available on all sorts of educational websites, but we've loved that they have started to partner kind of the character component with literacy and looking to find those strengths and then rewarding students by utilizing that book vending machine. Great question. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah. All right. I am not seeing any other questions, but you guys have our contact information. We're happy to pass questions to Amy as well. Um, so just keep in touch, let us know. Thank you all for joining us. Yeah, anything else, Megan, Amy, Steph?
No? All right. Well, thank you to everybody for joining. Once again, thank you to Amy. We truly appreciate your time today. I hope everyone has, whether you're returning to school or still finishing summer, I hope you have a wonderful 26-27 school year and stay in touch. Let us know if there's anything we can do to support.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome, everyone. I see everyone writing thank you.